All right, folks, looks like we got a crowd here today. Let's this is actually Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock Thai time. Good for people in the UK and Europe for a Sunday morning call. Today we're going to talk about right practice and wrong practice, and that we will use a sutta that was suggested by Bonds. Is that how you say your name? Or Giannis? How do you say your name?
Uh,
Huh?
Eunice.
Eunice. Okay. So Eunice has recommended a sutta out of the Samyutta Nikaya, or is it the Anguttara? Do you remember the name of the sutta or the number of the sutta?
No, I just remember the title
Again,
was like the Citadel similar.
So we'll
it's
give
from
it
the
to somebody. Go ahead, Ivan.
it's from the AN Sutta. I don't know the full abbreviation.
Yeah, the
Uh,
Anguttara Nikaya in the sevens, and it's what, number 67 or something?
7.63 it says here.
63. Okay. All right. And the name of the sutta is the fortress. I guess how many people have read that knowing that he had posted about it? All right. So looks like that it might be. I was going to ask a question. In fact, anyone who's read the sutta, did you recognize that the fortress sutta is actually a restatement of the Eightfold Noble Path? You didn't notice that, huh? All right. So, one thing that I will say about the Fortress Sutta is that it's from, if it's in the Guttara Nikaya, more than likely it's a later sutta. That doesn't mean that it's wrong, but it means that it was compiled later. And because it's the fortress, it more than likely came from the time of Ashoka, because he was an emperor who had a lot of fortresses around the kingdom. And so it was well planned out, well laid out. They knew what they were doing. Now, the Buddha also was a prince. He was trained in the martial arts, but because he, um, let us say, taught outside of fortresses, it's more than likely that he didn't say this. That doesn't make it wrong, but it's an interesting point that this is probably a later sutta. Now, the fortresses need to be well planned if they're going to be an outpost. Now, most of my knowledge about them is by watching Western movies where you'd have a Fort Apache here and there and all of that, as well as some medieval movies. And so we'll talk about it in the sense of the way that it's laid out in the sutta, in the sense that the first item on the list is to have a very strong foundation. That may be wooden post, or it might be concrete. It might be a stone, a rock, but we need to have a foundation. Now, that foundation is the first thing that would be put down at the right location once it's chosen. But the way that we practice, the foundation doesn't come until later. Then, in fact, the translator uses the word conviction, and a better word to be used would be confidence. And so this actually is on the Eightfold Noble Path. This would be the item of Samma Sankappa. That you could also use the word intention. That if your intention is to guard this area and have this fortress stand any opposition, then the intention is to have a very firm foundation. And so we develop this foundation as we progress along. Now, the second item on the list of the foundation would be a moat, and the third one would be a ring road. Now, it would be unlikely that the ring road would be outside of the moat. Normally, the moat would be your first frontier, and then this inner would be a way for the military, the army, to get around. And so these two things correspond to the Pali words of Hari and Opata, which has to do with sila. The moat then would be the idea of being embarrassed or shy or unwilling because of the way that you would feel about misbehaving. That's your first line of defense. That in fact, this is why they teach precepts to the children in Thailand, is to develop this idea of rules as your first line of defense. Now, Opata would be the ring road in the sense of feeling guilty. Now, there's a difference between feeling shy and feeling embarrassed, because feeling embarrassed means that you don't want other people to know that you have messed up, to where Opata is much more like guilt, in the sense that once you've recognized that you've messed up, you want to do something about it. You want to fix it. You want to make amends. You want to go to the person that you've offended and make amends with them. All right. And so these two items would then be considered our sila. So we have, first off, our conviction or our confidence. Then we have our fear of wrongdoing. So those are the first three. Now comes the idea of the military. You have to have an army. Now, that army is actually quite large in the sense that it's going to have, let's say, servants or slaves. It's going to have commanders. It's going to have battalions, etc., like that are well housed and well taken care of. And they're the ones that are going to be doing the fighting. So this would be considered the effort, one's right effort. Let's have a military. And so the next item on the list would be to have patrols, to have guards, those that are going out and making sure that everything around is correct. This would be considered sati, or mindfulness, that we're going to actually pay attention. We're going to remember to look, to be on guard, to use wisdom for that. And then we have the equipment, the war equipment, like arrows and things to be thrown and hurled, and all of our shields and swords and all of that. We would consider that the Dhamma, the knowledge that we have. And then another one would be the ramparts, and the ramparts then would be our discernment. That we don't let anything breach that discernment. That's the right, noble view or attitude. And so you can see, in fact, this sutta considers the Eightfold Noble Path. It's a very interesting sutta, but like I said, it comes from later time. And so when you develop that foundation, when you develop that conviction, that's actually another way of saying it, is taking refuge in the Buddha. That you know that the Buddha was there. You know that he found the right way of practice. We have historical evidence as well as the obvious, clear evidence that when we practice the Eightfold Noble Path, we get the desired results. So, when we practice this way, when we have discernment, right view, and then take the right effort, we can get things done. Now, the last item on the list is actually, they consider it food and the four kinds of food, and we would put this then as the joy, the benefit, that which is pleasing. And the first jhana, would there be, for most people, it's enough that you feel like you have succeeded. You feel like a winner. Then, in fact, that first jhana practiced over and over again, which means that you have no fear, you have comfort, have safety, security, you have success, and we practice that success over and over again, then we know that we can do this. It's that right attitude or right intention that we can do this. This begins to give us that winner's attitude, or this is the winner's attitude. Now, the Buddha was known as a lion. That's actually an emphasis upon this samma sankappa, this right intention, or better said, right noble attitude. We got the attitude that we can do this. We've got it made. We have practiced and we got good results, and we do it over and over again, and we know that we've got it made. And so this is the foundation that gives us then that attitude of being a lion, being strong. Nothing will matter. Nothing can waver you. You don't get blown away because you've got that underlying confidence. And so this is one of the things that we can develop. But the only way that we can develop this is by being successful at the practice over and over and over again till you know to the point that no matter what happens, no matter how obstructed or hindered the mind becomes, you can clean that out. You can clean out the mind and come back to that attitude that you can see things the way that they really are. This is the lion, the one who manages well. You can also talk about it as boss, or you could talk about it in the sutta sense, as this would be not the military in general, but the commanders, the prince, the princeling, the king. The king's actually not going to be at a remote fortress. He's going to be in the palace someplace. But the lieutenants, the generals, they're going to be there, and they have that confidence that their military is going to take the right effort to defeat Mara, to defeat the unwholesome. So, does anybody have any questions about this fortress sutta? What do you think, Timo?
The king, the emperor, is not in the fortress. Is there a place for him still in the analogy, or does he not belong to
Well,
it?
these are remote fortresses. It says specifically that these are the outlying fortresses. These are the encampments that take care of the empire. So naturally, the king or the emperor is not going to be in the outlying fortress. He's going to be in the central city, which would also be a fortress. Ivan, what do you think?
I think it's really nice, and I think the sutta mentioned about because of that you have to feed the guard, the sati with the right right food so that the sati can does its job well, something like that.
I didn't hear the right before you said something like that.
Meaning that if the sati is the patrol guard, because of that, we have to feed the sati the right food.
Yes, we have to remember to be on guard. We have to remember to be here now. We have to remember to look, to go out on patrol, to check that everything is all right. And so the guards would be the equivalent of the sati.
Yeah, and the food is maybe I remember it wrongly, but I think it says right. No, the concentration. That's the food that sustained it, something like that. I don't know.
Actually, the food, it says that there is 4 kinds of food, and the 4 kinds of food is equivalent to the 4 jhanas.
Oh yeah.
Now, in the jhanas, the first jhana is actually the most beneficial. That one of the things that I want to talk about as we get into it would be that Western mentality is that they want to get down to the bottom line. They don't want to go through all the preparation and whatnot. They want to just get the bottom line. And that means to get to equanimity first, to where they're actually not practicing correctly. You could say that then that would be like the butter, the ghee, the molasses, the sweet, the sugary things would be the equanimity or the higher jhana, to where the first jhana is going to be like your bread and meat and potatoes, the solid stuff. Okay, and we need to develop that first jhana, but that first jhana actually is very nourishing. That's where we bring in the satisfaction. That's where we bring in the sukha that actually is the cure for the spiritual disease of dukkha. So the spiritual disease then means that you've got to have your army well fed. In other words, we have to develop that ability to have delight in the Dhamma. We have to have the ability to have that satisfaction, to have that delight. This is the piti sukha that is developed in the first jhana. That's what gives us the confidence that we can do anything, because we've got that piti sukha. To where the later development is that you could say then that the second jhana would be joy beyond words, that they're experiencing how good it feels. Wow, this is feeling so nice. And the third jhana is being able to bring that under control so that we can go into the fourth jhana of just balance or equanimity. And a lot of people will think that they've got to get equanimity because that's all that the Buddha taught, rather than recognizing, no, that there is 4-step operation here, and that if you don't have a very solid foundation of right effort to get that sukha, to get that piti, to get the mind out of the unwholesome into the wholesome, then you'll never be able to develop the higher jhanas of going into equanimity. This is why the Buddha said in Sutta number 36 that the path to enlightenment is the first jhana. That in fact, if you have the first jhana well developed, the fruit of the first jhana actually is the door to, or the first step into the second jhana, and the fulfillment of being able to really, really feel good. Wow, what a relief this is! That's actually then the step of the fulfillment of the second jhana, is the path of the entry into the third jhana. So as I've said before, in your entire practice of 100% of your practice, 90% is the first jhana. And then the second jhana would be the next 9%. And then the third jhana would be the next 0.9%. And then the fourth jhana would be 0.009 or 0.9, so that you eventually get to that 100%. But we do this by gaining that confidence of being able to do that first jhana. So this is the nutriment that sustains the army of right effort. That in fact, when the army is well fed, well trained, they're itching for battle. They're ready to go. They don't have to drill much anymore. This is, in fact, the joke is that at halftime, the football team was kind of losing. They weren't doing really well. And the coach went in there and he raised them up and he gave them a pep talk and they were all ready to go. And he says, all right, guys, let's go get them. And they all rushed to the door and the door was locked. All right. But they rushed to the door. That's what happens when we have right noble effort. It's no longer an effort, it's energetic. We rush to the door, we rush to the Dhamma. We're enthusiastic about it. And so an army that's well fed and well trained, they're ready for battle. Let me at them. And this is the way that you could look at it also is, Myra, let me at him. Aha, I see you, unwholesome thought. I'm on guard. I can see you. I've got the discernment to see you, and I make the effort to change. So this is actually quite a lot of effort to bring that up, but that effort then becomes enthusiasm, eagerness for the battle with your unwholesome thoughts. So, Giannis, what do you think?
Yeah, it makes sense. Like in my practice, after I do anapanasati, I feel less craving. Like I'm not that interested in doing certain things. But it kind of has an effect that lasts for a while, like as if I fed my mind, basically.
Okay. Do you have any questions about this sutta?
No, I'm still trying to understand through experience, like all of the the food, the equipment. But no, I don't have like any specific questions now.
All right.
Thank you.
So you're ready for practice.
Yeah.
That's the way. Go train your mind. So Santiago, what do you think?
That's great. Yeah, you get to the point to where it's like, let me at them, and then they come, and you knock them out, get out of here, and you continue and repeat.
All right, Paul, what do you think?
Right sati, right view, right effort keeps going hand in hand over and over and repetition.
Good one. So Carl, it's been a while. Good to see you again, friend. What do you think?
Nothing to say, really. Nothing really to add on. Spot on.
All right. So as you guys read this sutta again, be sure to recognize that this is just another restatement of the Eightfold Noble Path. It's the correct practice. And you can see that at a remote fortress, that if they don't have all of these things together, then they're vulnerable to attack. If they're not out on patrol, then the enemy is going to sneak up on them. If the mode is not in good shape, which means that we're not careful with our behavior, that, in fact, one of the things about a moat is that it needs an input where you there's water, fresh water coming into the moat is where you draw your drinking water, and then the part of the moat that's the outflow or effluent, that's the place that becomes the sewer. And so if that moat is not working properly, that fortress is going to be full of shit. That's the way that we actually operate with our behavior, is that we need the moat there to keep us clean in our behavior. And then we need that ring road so that we can get around, because there may be an attack from any point, any side, and so the military has to come out of the gate and to defend the outside, and so we need that perimeter. So think of the ring road and the moat as our actual behavior. And so sometimes we have to, in fact, the ordinary path is the path of getting your act together, because they assume that the children who are practicing sila don't have the discernment. They don't have the wisdom to know what is correct, what is wholesome, and what is not wholesome. So we give them a set of rules. And so you could say that the moat then is that set of rules that we have. However, once the discernment is there, let us say the ramparts, that's our final protection. That's our discernment. That's the wisdom. To be able to handle any onslaught, because we know what is right and what is wrong. We have the confidence in the teaching of the Buddha. We've got all the ammunition that we need in the form of the Dhamma. And so this sutta is actually quite complete. But most people who read it for the first time don't understand how much subtlety and how much brilliance there is to it. So I recommend everybody go back and read this sutta with that confidence and with that discernment, the first and the last item on the list. So, Jose, do you have anything to say?
Thanks. Yeah, I did not get that it was the Eightfold Path when I was going over it. So thank you. I will have a second, third, and fourth reading of it. It ties the Eightfold Path in a very different manner.
Mm-hmm. It takes a Dhamma eye to see right through this thing, doesn't it? You have to know what he was talking about before he starts even talking about a fortress. So you become your own mighty fortress, invincible, completely capable, not a problem in the world. There is no enemy out there, because there is no one who would bother be an enemy of such a strong fortress. And so the enemies hold the fortress in high respect. So, Krishni, do you have anything to say? Krishni.
Yeah. I've been wondering, how did the Eightfold Noble Path become essentially the Fourfold Noble Path, where we talk about the right noble view, right sati, right effort, and right attitude. How does it work so well simplified?
All right, that's where we get started. Now, if you have those items, if you have right noble sati, right noble discernment, or right noble view, and right noble effort, that leads to right noble samasankappa, or the right attitude or the right intention, that brings about the unification of mind. And in fact, if you'll read the very first part of the Sutta 117, it says, "Oh, monks, I'm going to teach you right unification of mind. I'm going to teach you samadhi, rather. I'm going to teach you the samadhi mind with its supports and its features." All right. Now, the supports are those first four things that we have. So if you have right sati, right investigation, right effort, and right attitude, those four things together brings about a right unification of mind. That's 5 of them. The next 3 are the sila. And the easy way to look at it is that when the mind is noble and you don't want anything, then you're unlikely to go harm somebody to get it, because you don't want anything. And so actually in the noble Eightfold Noble Path, sila is the outcome. It's a feature of having a unified mind. It's the ordinary path where sila comes first, where you say to the students, "I'm going to beat your butt if you don't behave yourself." And so it starts off with shame and fear and guilt. But once the mind is noble, it's a different kind of shame, because I wouldn't bother to do that. I mean, I couldn't think of going out and hurting people to get my way, because the mind is noble. And so protecting that nobility is far more important than some stupid little wrongdoing. So the Eightfold Noble Path is actually complete in the sense of those 3 of right action, right speech, and right livelihood. And you will have right speech, right livelihood, and right action automatically when the mind is noble, when the mind is unified. This is actually, again, coming from Sutta number 117. It's a brilliant sutta. I highly recommend people read that one along with this Fortress Sutta. So, Animal, do you have something to say?
Dhammarato, can you please speak on the phrase practice like your hair is on fire? What does it mean to be
Well,
practicing like that?
actually, what that means is the hair on fire is a metaphor for that you can see dukkha. You can see your hair is on fire. You can see that there is dukkha here. Let's get rid of this. Let's put that fire out. That's what it really means. Now, you can look around the group here and you can see who has had their hair on fire. Looks like Mikey's had his hair on fire. It's all burned off. So this is the way also Timo looks like the hair is on fire. So practice like your hair is on fire means practicing like you can see the dukkha and you're ready for it. Does that make sense for you?
Yes. That mean practice when it's little peaceful, it's a little I guess not drowning in dukkha, so as to be able to build the skill over time.
Well, here's the point is that you put that fire out. Practice like your hair is on fire means that a dukkha's coming any minute now. The first thing you want to do is put that fire out and then enjoy the fact that you just put the fire out. Hey, I can put that fire out. I know how to put out fire. It also has the simile has to do also that the hair is the hair on the head. It's your head that's on fire. The dukkha is in the mind. And so putting out that fire, wow, what a relief it is. What great joy this is. And that's when we go into the first jhana, is the putting out of that fire. And once the fire is out, that's when we have that no fear. I mean, when the hair is on fire, there's a lot of fear there. But when you put that fire out, there's nothing to fear. When you put that fire out, you're really satisfied. You become comfortable. You're not comfortable when the hair is on fire. But when you put that fire out, wow, what a joy that is. That's the building of the sukha, which is a factor of the first jhana. But the fire itself, the heat, is coming from the hindrances. And we have to throw those hindrances out, which means put that fire out. We have to take the effort to put that fire out, but we also have to be able to see the hair is on fire, which means we have to remember to look to see that the hair is on fire. And so this is actually the practice of the Eightfold Noble Path, and you come to that point that you see your hair is on fire, you got to do something. You got to take the right noble effort to put that fire out. I don't think many places they talk about it quite that way. So what do you think?
Right, Dhammarato. Makes sense. I've heard it from you.
You what from?
I've heard the phrase from you.
Oh, you've heard this from me
Yeah.
before. Okay. Well, the one thing that's about the Dhamma is it's so good it's worth repeating over and over again.
Right.
Now, let's move on to what we would consider various wrong practices, because now that we've talked about this this particular sutta in the sense of practicing correctly, there are many of them that don't. One of the examples that I have seen recently is that, and I even said it and someone else said it in a different way, is that they hear Buddhism and they think, oh, it's all about peace and quiet and being compassionate and being all lovey-dovey and all of that kind of stuff. How does that, did you express that, Ivan?
It's more about this. I remember the exact word, but this energy, this enthusiasm to like, are you up to the task? Like, are you out for it? Like, can you handle this?
Yeah, that's the question. Are you up to it? Do you have a strong foundation? In other words, those that see it as weak, namby-pamby, easygoing, and then when the tough gets going, they blame somebody else. This is, in fact, I would consider this the teaching that is referred to by name of choiceless awareness. In other words, they do not make the choice to make their fortress completely defensible, that is actually indefensible. And so there they are, lollygagging along. Everything is okay. Everything is fine. I've got choiceless awareness. I'm awareness. And then the boom drops. Their hair is on fire. And what do? They start blaming someone else for it. Why did you set my hair on fire? Not recognizing that we set our own hair on fire. And so this means then that they're not taking the right effort, that in fact, this is not a choiceless awareness practice, that in fact, both the word choiceless and awareness are incorrect. Both of them. It's easy to see that choiceless. No, this is a choice. You've got to make a choice. But the awareness is weak, to where the Buddha has a strong, in fact, paying attention, looking, investigating, noting in a strong way. And so I use the word noting. I can bring that up. This is the noting technique means that they do not take the right effort. This can lead to several different problems. One is that some people think that, oh, I should not develop joy. I should not be developing the first jhana. I should go ahead and go right to equanimity, go right to the fourth jhana, and they'll never get there. They haven't gotten that attitude developed. They haven't gotten that mind unified. And the example that I have is the story of there was a Western monk in Tibet, and they thought that he was ready to go into seclusion. They have a system there to where they'll put someone in seclusion for 3 months. And so he was there in seclusion for 3 months. He got all passive. He got all kind of relaxed. He was just tooling along. Everything was beautiful. And so it was time for him to come out of seclusion. They sent a car for him. And he got in the car. And on the way down the road, on mountain roads in Tibet are pretty bumpy. They're not smooth highways. Then, in fact, I reminded myself of this when the last time I was in the car, that this island here is not very well developed when it comes to the road system. And not only that, but they do have not only bad roads, but they also have speed bumps. And so you can see this monk coming down that mountain in the car, and he couldn't handle it. It was a bumpy ride. He wasn't ready for a bumpy ride. He had not dealt with bumpy rides when he was in seclusion. And he said to those folks, please stop this car. I'm getting out. And he walked back up. He wanted to stay in seclusion because he couldn't handle car trip. That means that he had not developed. He had not taken the right effort to manage that inconvenience. So what we need to do is to make sure that our army of right effort is well trained so that you can, if you've got a bumpy car ride, you can take the right effort to manage that. Remember, it's the car that's bumpy. It's the body that's bumpy in the car, but the mind is not bumpy. The mind is steady. And so this is the problem with choiceless awareness is that they're aware that the car is bumpy, but because they're not making any good choices about it, they let the mind become bumpy too, and they can't handle it. They want out of the car. They want out of life. They're blaming the car. Oh, the car is bumpy. I can't ride in this car. The car is bumpy. Not recognizing that the car is bumpy, yeah, but the mind's not bumpy because it's well trained. So the next wrong practice that you will find is the noting method. Because they note the dukkha, they can see the hair is on fire, it continues on fire, they watch it burn. Then they become really afraid, they become really disgusted. And when they're really, really unhappy about how mind is burning so much, there's actually a term that was stolen, not borrowed, not used correctly. The dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul means that the mind is bumpy. Even though they've noticed all the bumps, they've noticed the hair on fire, but now it's become quite dangerous. They're not practicing correctly. To where the teaching of the Buddha with this Eightfold Noble Path that we've been talking about is good in the beginning. It's good in the middle, and it's good in the end. To where the Vajrayana, the choiceless awareness, is not good in the middle. Neither is the Mahasi method of the noting. They're not removing the hindrances. They're not removing the fire of the mind. And for that reason, just their correct or their not correct practice, rather, will burn them to the point that they're gone into this thing that is referred to as the dark night. Now this comes from an article that was part of the Visuddhimagga, and it's called the 16 Steps of Insight, to where they practice mainly the Trilokana, the three characteristics. And so they see anicca, 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 and then they become, because they can't handle the anicca, they have it glad in the mind, that anicca becomes overwhelming. In fact, the anicca is the spark that lights the hair on fire, and then they burn because they don't have the right noble effort to put that fire out over and over and over again. There's also the group that, this is very Western, by the way, and that is the bottom liners. I don't care about correct practice. I don't care about the Eightfold Noble Path. Somewhere in there, I've heard that equanimity or upekkha is the final goal. Let's go get the final goal. And they're not willing to go through the part of the wholesome thought or whatever. And so these people, when you disagree with them, they'll get really angry. Their hair will go right on fire, and they'll blame whoever's talking to them about it. Is, oh, you made me angry because you didn't agree with me that equanimity is the only place to go. That in fact, the correct practice has several stages along the way. Now, the interesting part about it is that if you start practicing correctly, the very first time you sit down and remove unwholesome thoughts from the mind, you're getting the benefit of it right then and there. That this is not a long journey, it's an immediate relief. But the more we practice, the better the relief it is, and the easier it is to find, because now we're skilled at seeing the dukkha and doing something about it. And so we get immediate relief. And as we get immediate relief, we develop that confidence that I can get immediate relief. Doesn't matter what happens. Doesn't matter how the hair is on fire. I can put it right out. It doesn't matter if the car is on a bumpy road. The bumpy road makes the car bumpy, which makes the body bumpy. But the mind, I can do that. I've got that confidence. So these are the three major problems that you find in Western Buddhism. Just going along to get along, being nice and sweet and compassionate and all of that, until their hair's on fire, and then they want to blame somebody else. Or they want to practice over and over again, just looking at the dukkha. That in fact, a couple of years ago, Kat, before he ordained, was talking to one of these well-known Buddhist teachers. I won't give her name, but she's in England, someplace, and that she confessed to him that she sees these hindrances. She sees these fetters that come up. And her answer to that was, that means I've got to go meditate more. I've got to go deep into meditation. As if the idea is that by sitting in deep meditation, that deep meditation is somehow going to burn off these defilements. But normally deep meditation is a kind of sleep or slumber. It's the mind is dull. And so I do not recommend people have a deep meditation that's dull, but in fact, let's be on guard. Let's wake up. Let's look at what's going on. Let's be able to do something about it immediately. And so when someone is practicing and the hindrances comes up, instead of saying, oh, I need to have a deep meditation so that those seeds get cooked somehow and then this doesn't come up, that's wrong practice. The right practice is to do what? To do it right then and there. She sees the hindrance come up, out you go. Take the right effort, throw it out right now. If your hair is on fire, instead of blaming somebody else and say, oh, I'm going to have to go into deep meditation to put my hair on fire out, the answer is no, put it out right now. This is how we practice. And so this idea of doing an hour a sit once a day, that means that you've got 23 hours of hindrances. The right way to practice is, in fact, that Fortress Sutta is an excellent sutta because those guards have got to be on guard 24 hours a day. They got to be watchful. You got to see if anybody is sneaking up. They got to keep the moat pure. They got to keep the road unblocked. They got to be well fed. They've got to have that joy, that sukha. Got to have that pity party. Not a pity party, but pity in the sense of you got it made. Hey, this is so good. So these are 3 ways of practicing incorrectly. Does anybody have any other ideas about how people practice incorrectly? While you're thinking about it, I'll give you one more, and that is no practice at all. Where does the idea of no practice at all come from? Is because you believe that things will work out on their own by themselves. Oh, if I die, never mind, I'll be reborn. I've got plenty of time. I've got all eternity to clean out my mind. And so they don't practice. They're waiting for a good opportunity to practice. That woman in England, it says, oh, I've got to have the right opportunity. I've got to go to a retreat and sit and get deep meditation, as opposed to saying, right, I can see that now. Let's do something right now about it. So the Buddha actually didn't recommend the kind of formal sitting that you see in retreats. He said to sit down. Sure, sit down because it's comfortable. Sit down, stay your back erect, and bring mindfulness to the fore, which means in this sutta to bring out your guardians. Go on patrol. Look around. Clean things up. Make sure that things are okay. Let's have a good guardian at the gate. That's the first line of defense, is to know your territory. Look closely. Remember to put that guard out there and see what's going on. Don't wait for a good opportunity. In fact, that's what pre-land or Pure Land Buddhism is that, oh, we're waiting for some Amitabha, some savior who's going to make the environment good enough so that I'll eventually start to practice. Well, in fact, if things aren't good enough, you probably won't practice. You'll think that Pure Land is all you need. This is good enough until the road gets bumpy again. Then you want out. Where in fact the bumpy is always in the mind. Right, reminds me of the Christian idea of forgiveness. That, oh, you could be a pickpocket, you could be a murderer, you could be a rapist, but if you get forgiveness, then you can get into heaven. So, how many rapists, how many murderers, how many pickpockets, how many bank thieves have gotten forgiveness and now they're in heaven? The place must be a wreck. Can't you imagine a heaven that breaks out into a bar fight every 10 seconds? Because he's let the riffraff in. He's given forgiveness. They haven't earned their way into heaven. They haven't taken the right effort. So much for your free land Buddhism. The place is full of riffraff, low-class people. Why do you want to wait and practice with them? Why don't you start practicing right now? Your hair is on fire. Now is the time.
Dhammarato,
Yes.
I can think of one type of practice that's not good, that sometimes you get on YouTube, like warrior monks type thing, where it's like they jump straight into just suppressing the thought. They bite down and put their tongue on the top of the roof of their mouth, and they're just, don't give in to it, don't act out of it, don't do nothing. Just burn with it.
In other words, they practice like their hair is on fire, and they take a fire hose to it. Only the fire hose is blowing more cold air on it rather than putting the fire out. They just make it worse. Yes, so thank you, Santiago. Yes, I have seen that. They work and they work and they work and they work. Oh, I've got to work really hard. I'll push this through and I'll make it. And all they're doing actually is not looking at the fact that they're creating their own suffering right then and there. This is exactly the same thing as the religions that practice austerities. The Buddha didn't allow the austerities.
It is mentioned in the sutta, but it's like the last resort.
A last resort.
The absolute last thing you would ever do is to do that.
I can't even think of a time when we need to do that last resort, because things change on their own anyway. That in fact, that really, really pushing and pushing really hard keeps the wheel of samsara going. It keeps it going. The Buddha practiced that. He knows that it doesn't work. He almost killed himself with it. And so he stopped. And he says, no, joy is the path. Stop working so hard. But we all start working really hard until we recognize that, wait a minute, working really hard doesn't work. Many of us have been working really hard and working really hard at the wrong thing, like a job, inventors inventing things. They work really hard. And so they're doing two things wrong. One is that they're working really hard, and number two is that they're working on the wrong thing. The right way to practice is to work on the right thing, and that is your mind. That mind is on fire, and just put it out. You can just put it out like this. Oh, I've got that hindrance gone now. So thanks, Santiago. Does anybody else have one? How about you, Mr. Ben?
No questions, thanks, Dhammarato. But yeah, when Sati's strong, it needs to be, because the mind's fast, and if it's distracted, then things will sneak in. But then we can see them and put them out there.
So, Ben and Santiago, I want to congratulate you both for having such wholesome things that you're putting onto Discord. Thank you.
Thanks, Dhammarato.
So,
joyful to share the Dhamma.
Excellent. So, Paul, do you have anything to talk about in the sense of wrong behavior, wrong practices?
I just kind of have this word stillness, and there's a lot of misconception around it, saying just lay down and be still and see your mind for what it is. It's basically saying let the fire run out by itself, which is just indicating that things change and you're not putting an active change when you can actually see that you're being in hindrances. So you're not taking an active role of a champion. Instead of doing victory laps and putting it out, you actually just allow the fire to burn itself out, and then immediately you experience the changing nature of things. And a lot of people consider that to be correct practice, is just waiting for things to change, and eventually they're good, so they think, oh, this practice actually works because I sat in meditation for a really long time and the fire went out. Meanwhile, they didn't take any active action.
Mm-hmm. But then the road's going to get bumpy again.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to change, and they're not developing any kind of like skill set to come into that stillness immediately when you see it. Is to actively see that you can change, that things do change, and the whole nature of things is changing, and I can actually change it. Is taking that responsibility, taking that attitude.
So this is a very passive kind of behavior. In fact, you could say that that would be kind of free land, Pure Land Buddhism. So they're either waiting for things to get really good, or they wait around to get things a little bit good, and then they enjoy that, not recognizing that that fire is going to start up again. That road's going to get bumpy again. Are you ready to have an unbumpy mind when the road gets bumpy? Are you ready to put that fire out right now? This is the right effort. And so this is basically, you could say that all wrong practices have that one quality, is not putting out the right noble effort to make a change and develop that as a skill so that it becomes easy practice. Easy right effort. So all of the wrong practices, and by the way, you could say that Western Buddhism is excellent at finding some way or another to practice wrongly. And so they don't get the real benefit out of the teaching of the Buddha. So, Paul, do you have anything to say now?
I was
Well,
wondering. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
All right, how about you, Martin?
Uh, Actually, I wanted to express like metta, karuna, mudita, upeka, picking up picking that up as a practice as opposed to a result of practice.
Actually, that's correct. The Buddha never recommended to do metta as a meditation practice, but rather metta is the outcome of having that mind be not bumpy when in fact the car ride is bumpy. When the car ride is bumpy, but the mind's not bumpy, then you can have metta for the road crew and for the driver of the car. But if the mind gets bumpy when the road gets bumpy and the car gets bumpy, guess what? We're going to blame the driver. And he can't do anything about the bumpy road. He's just used to bumpy roads. So metta is not a practice. Metta is actually the outcome, to have a mind that is not bumpy enough to where you can have friendship with the bumpy road driver instead of wanting out of the car. So, Jose, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, that question really went very close to her for me. For me, one of the major challenges all these years practicing is to understand this is the result of good practice, a side effect, if you wish, or this is the actual practice. For me, it was something that even today, sometimes I mistake things like this is the practice and this is the result of practice. For many years, I did metta. And other kinds of things, mistaking like equanimity, mistaking that the result for the practice, and something that's from time to time it's still here, mistaking the end result for the practice.
Let me give you this analogy. A major big freighter, a big ship, maybe an aircraft carrier, or in the old days, a battleship. Battleships, as well as aircraft carriers, cruise liners, freighters, none of those kinds of ships have a brake. None of them, not even a canoe, has a brake. What we learn to do is to steer correctly. That you can turn a ship around much easier than you can get it to stop. That means that we learn to control the mind rather than stopping the mind. So Santiago was talking about people who were trying to stop the mind rather than learning to control it and steer it. And this is what correct practice is. Correct practice is being able to steer the mind into the wholesome. And when we take the right effort, the right energy to actually let things settle down while we're taking the ship and running it around in this tight little circle, it'll stop. All we have to do is stop pushing. But those guys who are trying to stop the mind, they can't do it because they can't even control it. And so for you, don't look for equanimity, look for joy. Because if you have joy, if you've developed joy, then things will settle down. This is like the first jhana. If you have the joy of first jhana and the joy of second jhana, then you learn to control that, and that settles down into kind of a easy going because you've got that control. Another way of saying it is that strong people don't go around pushing their strength. A bully is actually weak inside, and therefore he's got to go around showing off his strength. But a fourth Dan in karate, he never tries to pick a fight because he already knows that he can win. He doesn't have to keep proving himself. This is that Samma Sankappa, is when you develop that attitude because you've won so many battles over and over and over again without a loss, that you know that no matter what happens, you can handle it easily, comfortably. Not a problem in the world. And only then, from that confidence, does it grow peaceful. So back to that fortress analogy, the fortress is going to remain at peace and because it's strong. It's well maintained. It's well guarded. It's well cleaned. And because of that, the enemies know that they're not going to attack it. They're not going to win. And so this is the way that we develop equanimity, is through strength. And the strength comes from correct practice of joy. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah. Thanks.
So, Karwan, do you have something to say?
Actually, I have something to say about exactly what you just said. I'm doing the practice, and most of the days now my state is, let's say, okay. I'm not in a deep dukkha, but also not in joy. I remain, let's say, in the middle, and I settle for that instead of practicing really to get to the place of joy. So I just settle for being, okay, I'm okay. I'm not suffering. But,
Right.
settling.
But then when the suffering comes, when the bumpy road gets bumpy, you want to blame the driver for driving on a bumpy road because you haven't really developed, you've gotten it good enough. But when the road gets bumpy, the mind will get bumpy too.
Yeah. And
So
then
we
I
have
start
to
the
practice it, that joy. In other words, let's put some shock absorbers on this old truck. And that shock absorber is the joy. I can handle this. So, Mr. Ben, do you have something to add? You turn your video on.
No, nothing more to add, Dhammarato, thanks. Just the Dhamma is delightful.
It is. It's good stuff. So, Dean, what do you think? How about you,
Okay,
Tim?
here, Dhammarato.
Oh, go ahead, Dean.
I'm just here to listen today. I'm just here to listen today. I'm actually driving, but yeah, I'm happy with what you were saying. So thanks very much.
Tim, do you have something to add?
Yeah, it's been a joy, really. And to the wrong practices, I think the Buddha talked about the giant practices, indulging in pain to burn off bad karma or something. And he asked them how much bad karma exactly they burned off, and yeah, it was nonsense. That's fitting.
Okay. There is a phrase of burning off karma, which means actually taking action to remove old bad karma by practicing something that's actually painful. The austerities, the self-flagellation, the starving of oneself was what the Jains thought would burn off old bad karma. In other words, they tortured themselves without recognizing that the torturing themselves right here, right now is actually creating dukkha right here, right now, in the name of burning it off. The right thing to do instead is when just sit there on guard, and when the dukkha comes up, grab it, got it, and be on guard. That's what mindfulness is all about: is to be on guard, wakeful, watchful, ready to do an investigation. So this is the right practice. Don't try to think that, when the going gets tough, I'll deal with it then. No, we want to be correctly trained. So when the tough gets going, we've got it. Instantly you can remove it. This is not a battle or a war that lasts 100 years or 100 days or 100 hours or even 100 minutes. This is something that you can grab right then and there and say, I got ya. Aha, I see you, Mara. So it's something that we do immediately, but we have to be on guard all the time so that we can fight that battle and win it immediately. Like the grand masters of martial arts, especially the Asian martial arts, judo or jujitsu or whatever like that, they win that fight with one blow. It's not like they fight like the sword fighters back and forth and make a movie out of it, and it lasts 15 minutes. Oh no, you stick him and you've got it. You don't prolong the battle. You win it right then and there because you're good at it, because you're well practiced. So, anybody else got something? All right. Well, thank you, guys. This has been a really good time. I've really enjoyed this. Mikey, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, what a joy it is to hear the Dhamma and be with noble friends. It's easy to be enthusiastic for the practice when we share it with one another. So check out the one-on-one channel on our Discord. And if you'd like to, put down a time and a day for when you'd like to have a one-on-one call. We've been seeing more and more one-on-one calls, and it's a great thing to see. We really are about making friends here and enjoying the Dhamma and practicing building that enthusiasm. So yeah, thank you all for being here today.
I would like to go ahead. All right. I'd like to add one point, and that is that since the latest Guru Viking video was put up last week, we've had about 10 or 12 people who have joined the Dhamma Friends server, but they haven't gotten active yet. So I would recommend that you go onto the intros and the hellos and find people who have come on the server recently and reach out to them. They already want the Dhamma. They wouldn't have joined. This is not a cold call. This is actually a hot lead. They've joined the group. So go grab someone and have a call with them or a direct chat. Let's get them involved.
There have been a lot of impromptu hangouts too in the evening Thai time. So if people are around that time and they check out the hangout on Discord, there may well be people chatting already if they don't want a one-on-one but want to hang out with people.
Yes. Thank you, Ben. You've been doing a lot of that. All right. Does anybody have any last things to say before we finish this call? All right. Thank you all. It's been a delight. I've really enjoyed my call with you guys. I hope you've enjoyed it too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhammarato.
Thank you,
everyone.
Dhammarato.
Bye.
Thank you.